Living conditions. Buffy's roommate struggles escalate.
We open with Buffy mocking her roommate Kathy's music, which is Cher. And honestly, from the shit we've had to endure over 3 seasons at the Bronze, she is the last person to be criticizing anyone's music.
That's a good point. Kathy keeps pestering Buffy with roommate things, complaining about Buffy coming and going at weird hours, and accusing Buffy of taking some of her milk, which is a completely valid complaint. And she also suggests keeping a call log for when the phone bill comes.
Yeah, we're supposed to be on Buffy's side based on her reaction, but I thought requesting that she be responsible and not steal other people's stuff was very valid. I was not on Buffy's side.
I wasn't on either of their side, but yes, I agree. Buffy pretends to be polite and finally manages to get away. She wanders around with Willow for a while, wishing a monster would pop out because she's bored.
They're discussing their living situations, and Willow mentions her roommate too, who we have not seen yet.
And when Willow leaves, a green-eyed ghoul glares at Buffy.
I said he looks like a Spirit Halloween animatronic. Something jumps out at Buffy, and she thinks it's a monster, but it's actually Kathy.
So it's even worse, and she says they should go get coffee.
A monster does attack, and I did like Buffy shoving Kathy into the bushes. That was pretty funny. I enjoy shoving people myself regularly, and I laugh every time.
Buffy fights the monster guy and he runs off before Kathy gets back up.
And her sweater is ruined.
Buffy tells her it was a guy trying to take her backpack.
The monster runs into other monsters, and they speak in a monster language, saying that she could be the one. Didn't realize Jet Li was so popular around this time.
And this is a minor thing. I get Buffy keeping her secret identity, but everybody else knows that weird stuff happens all the time. Why does she have to hide the fact that it was a monster?
And this college is in the same town as everything else, right?
Yeah, I mean, those CGI wasps are probably still flying around up there.
You would think that the people in the local college would have heard about the mayor turning into a giant CGI dragon thing.
And the librarian blowing up the high school.
And the community turning into a cult trying to kill children.
And all the Halloween costumes coming to life.
And basically everything.
Buffy goes to Giles' house, where she finds him coming home from a run. She tells him about the monster guy and mentions that Kathy was there, which Giles says she should try to avoid.
She gives a really crappy description of the monster and expects Giles to just know what she's talking about.
Giles says he'll look into it, and Buffy asks what he's doing that day, which he points out is odd for her, and she reveals she's trying to avoid Kathy.
Giles tries to tell her that that's life. You sometimes have to deal with people that aren't your favorite, but she cuts him off because that's not what she wants to hear.
Buffy says she will take a new approach and be nicer.
Meanwhile, Kathy's cleaning her sweater and starts to go through Buffy's closet for new clothes and finds a bag of weapons that's just sitting right there.
Which never comes up again. In line for the cafeteria, Buffy sees Kathy and tries to avoid her, and the guy behind her ends up trying to chat her up.
His name is Parker, and she's immediately attracted to him.
For some reason.
What happened to the dude from the last episode, with all the books on his head?
Yeah, Riley.
Yeah, let's hope for a love triangle, because that was so awesome when it happened in the past. Hell, let's throw Faith in there and make it a love rectangle.
Parker tries desperately to sound clever and witty, so naturally it feels like he's trying too hard.
And like he's in an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Buffy half invites him to eat with her and the gang, but he says he has someone waiting for him, so they share addresses and he leaves. Buffy goes to sit with her lame friends and Oz, and they talk about how the guy will definitely want to talk to Buffy again.
They're interrupted by Kathy, to Buffy's annoyance, and she also notices that Kathy is wearing her sweater.
She says she didn't think Buffy would mind, since they are like sisters now that they live together, and Buffy pretends to brush it off.
Even though Buffy already stole Kathy's stuff before.
And she's horrified to see Kathy get sauce on her sweater.
Sauce? I thought it was ketchup.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly what it was. Ketchup is sauce.
Maybe on your side of the country.
Later, Buffy calls Willow to complain about Kathy, and there is apparently a party happening in Willow's dorm. The things I don't miss about college.
Even though Willow's situation appears worse than Buffy's, Buffy, being very self-centered, doesn't even think to ask. and just assumes everything is the worst for her all the time.
Kathy comes in, and the two of them keep doing things that annoy each other until they finally go to bed.
Buffy has a dream about scorpions and blood and the green-eyed ghoul sucking her soul out or something.
Buffy tells everyone about it in a common area, including Giles. And Kathy shows up and hears Giles talking about dream interpretation, so she tells him about her weird dream, which turns out to be the same as Buffy's.
And Buffy and Kathy are both openly contentious with each other now.
Kathy finally leaves, and Buffy tells the others to do some research because she has to go to class. And when she leaves, the others comment on Buffy acting out of character, but she wasn't. I thought those comments were really weird and didn't fit at all.
I agree. We cut to the demons performing some kind of ritual, hopefully far enough off campus that people don't notice them doing all that stuff.
They say that she is in fact the one, and they have prepared to summon Taparich, something like that, some kind of weird demon thing.
Buffy enters her room to find Parker talking to Kathy and gets very jealous.
When Parker leaves, Buffy and Kathy get more openly aggressive with each other, making criticizing comments and doing things that annoy each other.
I'm cold.
Well, I'm hot. Deal with it.
Maybe the world revolved around you where you used to live, but it's share time now.
I'll show you share time.
Meanwhile, Willow's expressing her concerns about Buffy to Oz, who says he'll hang out with her to make sure she's okay.
And Willow again says that she's acting out of character, which again has not been happening.
On the way to meet Buffy, Oz passes a girl who he locks eyes with for an extended period of time.
It was weird.
Agreed. And then we see the army guys from last episode running through some trees.
Who I had already completely forgotten about.
And who also don't matter in this episode either.
Oz meets up with Buffy and they go on patrol, where Buffy keeps complaining about Kathy. And in her frustration, she ends up breaking a bench.
It was symbolic.
Of her breaking a bench.
Yeah, what it symbolizes, I don't know. Later, Buffy and Kathy's actions are driving each other insane. And Buffy finally decides to just go to sleep.
And she promptly experiences the Rob Zombie music video again. And when she wakes up, she sees Kathy waking from the same dream.
Later, Kathy, for some reason, is bitching to Willow about Buffy. I didn't really understand that. Let me bitch about my roommate to her best friend.
And as Buffy approaches, cartoonishly over-the-top music plays.
Sometimes I get the feeling that she is not quite normal, you know?
Kathy walks off, and Buffy questions Willow about why she was talking to her.
She says Kathy is evil and has to be killed, and provides Kathy's toenail clippings as evidence, saying they grew after being cut, which is indicative of a demon.
And I wondered why Buffy would have been checking on that in the first place. Willow recommends that she talk to Giles before just murdering somebody. And when Buffy leaves, Willow calls ahead to Giles, and I thought it was pretty funny.
No, not bitchy crazy, more like homicidal maniac crazy. So I told her to come see you, okay?
When Buffy arrives to Giles' house, he, Oz, and Xander capture her in a net and tie her up with ropes that clearly would not hold her. Maybe these are special plot ropes.
Giles says he suspects that Buffy may have been possessed by the green-eyed ghoul, and he goes to find items for a spell to make the demon reveal itself.
Meanwhile, Willow goes to see Kathy in her room and tells her she should leave, which Kathy doesn't want to do. And then Oz calls, and Willow tells Kathy she should stay put, making this entire scene pretty much unnecessary.
At Giles's, Buffy gets loose and knocks out Xander and Oz. She goes to the dorm and confronts Kathy, who smacks her.
They get into a big physical fight, and then Buffy rips Kathy's face off, which was actually pretty cool.
I agree, and it is revealed that Kathy is a green-eyed ghoul.
She says she needs to finish her ritual, which involves forcing a victim to eat animal blood while they're asleep.
And at the same time, Giles is reading about the ritual. At the campfire, the other green-eyed ghouls summon up Taparich, or whatever his name is, and they head for the dorm.
Kathy says she left her dimension to go to college, and the cult we've seen is actually going after her, not Buffy.
Kathy says they could identify her by her lack of a soul, and that's why she was stealing Buffy's. They continue fighting for a while.
While Giles gets Willow, Oz, and Xander up to speed and starts performing a ritual to save Buffy.
The fight continues, with the room getting more and more wrecked as it goes on. I thought the fight was okay.
Yeah.
Willow and Giles manage to finish their spell, and Buffy's soul is returned right before the head demon arrives, who turns out to be Kathy's father.
They have what's supposed to be a humorous conversation, where he tells Kathy he's taking her back to their dimension and to stop acting like a child.
He opens up a whirlpool of CGI that sucks her in, and then he jumps in himself.
We close with Willow being Buffy's new roommate and apologizing for doubting her, which was stupid. And Buffy saying it was Kathy that made her act like an immature moron, not the fact that she's actually an immature moron, kind of irritated me.
Willow suddenly picks up Buffy's sandwich and asks if she can have it, and before Buffy can answer, she bites into it. I thought it was a good ending.
I suppose.
It's not quite up to R.L. Stein standards, but I'll take it. Living conditions. Overall,
Another episode where we're supposed to feel bad for Buffy for having to live in the world with other people. Kathy is supposed to be annoying. Buffy doesn't like annoying people, but she spent the whole show so far with some of the most annoying people I've ever seen.
that's a very good point. She should have a high tolerance for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe even a fetish at this point.
I did like the over-dramatized sequence of events, like the ketchup falling on the sweater, or the toenail clipping, or the pencil on the book. Those were pretty funny. Buffy implied that it was the demon that was making her responsible for being a bitch. And all the other characters saying, oh, Buffy's acting all out of character, was false. She's always acted self-centered and selfish. So I didn't really understand that. There also seemed to be a lot of pointless bouncing around between scenes for the sake of trying to make this episode seem more dynamic. Like Willow going to Kathy's to say, you should leave. Oh wait, you should stay, bye. Those didn't really work. And I didn't really like the ending of Kathy turning out to be a demon. I thought they could have come up with something a little better than that. And it reaffirmed Buffy's childish convictions, which only makes them stronger. So we again see her immaturity actually serving to prove her right, and everybody else having to apologize for telling her to stop acting like a f***ing baby. And now that Willow, who we saw in the last episode, was starting to grow in her own direction and flourish, is living with Buffy now. So I guess we can expect to see that growth stop and revert. And the demons detecting the lack of a soul, were they also blind? Did their other senses not work? Would Kathy's plan have actually been effective? Could they just reach up and say, I'm going to try and rip off your face, and if it comes off, you're a demon?
Yeah, I mean, once they took Buffy and then figured out that it wasn't her, wouldn't they just come right back?
Yeah.
And say, hey, it must have been Kathy?
And only the one guy was summoned, so the other guys are still walking around, right?
I guess. I mean, maybe they went back to their own dimension. Maybe I think that's what they were there for, was just to get her back, so I don't know.
So hop in the pickup and come back over. I thought this episode had potential. I liked it better than the first episode of this season, but it still wasn't great. And I think the humor worked a little bit, but it didn't offset the characters not making any sense enough. I gave it a C+.
I gave it a C. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Thought this episode was a vaguely funny idea stretched out over 45 minutes. By the time it was over, it felt like there really wasn't much to it. Some of the humor was funny, but the actual plot wasn't engaging enough to sustain the episode on a deeper level. Again, Buffy was not acting out of character. I thought it was really weird that they had all those comments about that. I mean, farther into the episode, once they actually capture her, you could say, yeah, she's acting a little crazy maybe. But at the point that first came up, I didn't see any issues with her. There was a lot of setup for other things in this episode. We had Parker popping in for 2 seconds. We had that weird moment with Oz and that girl.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, and that tiny glimpse of the military people again, which I thought was going to get advanced in this episode in some way.
Seems the writers don't fully understand how foreshadowing works.
Yeah, they just kind of stick things in and expect you to go along with it. In the end, I thought this episode felt kind of, I don't want to say necessarily pointless, but it doesn't feel like anything in this episode is actually going to carry over at all, other than the fact that now Willow is Buffy's roommate. Which, why wouldn't they have requested that in the first place if apparently it was really easy to get that to happen? So hopefully things will pick up after this.
We say that for every episode.
I know. You can tell how broken my spirit is with the way I say it now.
Thanks for watching.